So digital twins is, if you like, the pinnacle of quite a long tradition of collecting information, putting it together in a model, and then presenting it often digitally to enable decision makers to understand what's going on, to make decisions about what they're doing, and to think through the consequences of the plans that they make and the interventions they make. So cyber-physical systems are when we talk about having a real thing and our digital model of it connected together in some way so that we can treat them as a whole. So if I have a car with an engine management system, it's got a digital model of the car inside, but I've also got the real car in front of me. And those two things together work much better than one on their own. The potential for these sorts of connected digital real systems is quite profound, actually, particularly as we're getting more and more sensors that can go onto real things, be they environmental, in buildings, in machines, but also the computers that let them let that information come together and be processed. So we can now get a better and more accurate understanding of what the systems around us are doing. We can intervene in them more directly, and we can predict what is going to happen more effectively. So we can expect complicated systems like hospitals to run more effectively, factories to run more efficiently, energy to get used more efficiently, and any of those sorts of complex decisions we're making to be better informed as these systems become more common and become connected. So collective thinking, I think, has got two really key relationships with what we're talking about in digital twins. The first is that the better informed your digital twin is, the better it's connected to what's going on in the real world, the more accurate a model you've got and the more useful it can be for you. So the more people that are involved in contributing information, the better. So there's that side of collective intelligence. The thing that we're really convinced of here in the centre is that making these things available to people means that not only is one person cleverer, but everybody that can access that information is cleverer. So they contribute to our collective intelligence as well as benefiting from it. And democratizing access to the information that they've got in them enables more people to engage in that decision-making process about the systems that they're part of, their towns, their schools, their countryside. So we're particularly interested in social digital twins, and a social digital twin is a digital twin, as we've discussed, of a social system rather than necessarily a physical or mechanical one. So we're probably familiar with things like weather forecasting, where we've got a model of the environment, and we've all seen air traffic control pictures where we've got a model of aircraft flying around. But in a social digital twin, you're trying to model what happens when you've got a group of people working. And that's hard because people are complicated and they don't tend to behave in very predictable ways. But you can still model that behavior. And if you had a twin of a social environment like a town or an organization, you could then model what happens when you change something, when something bad happens and people respond to it, or something good happens, or when you implement a policy and people start to behave differently. So we think social digital twins are a really powerful tool for trying to create the sort of policy answers that we need to some of the challenges we're facing at the moment. They'll be difficult to put together, and they're going to be a really interesting engineering challenge, but the potential benefits that we have for policy making and for anybody who's running an organization or trying to manage a group of people is enormous. I think in time, as they become more a part of the policy-making cycle and people get more used to using them and they get more comfortable with the decisions being made on the basis of them, I think they're going to have more and more impact. And it's going to be largely beneficial as long as there is that transparency of where information has come from and how it's informed the decision-making process. And there, I think they're going to be have the potential to be an enormous force for good. There is, of course, a set of worries and risks that we want to manage that are being actively discussed around how people are represented in those models and whether that becomes a breach of trust or a breach of privacy, and the extent to which those models are used in ways that people are comfortable with and predicted. But we're on that journey, and as that gets more mature, I think we're going to see more and more policy decisions informed with modelling and more complex modelling, and eventually with things we'd recognise as digital twins. What we're finding is many of the technical challenges are addressed in part. So we've got the technology to build sensors, we've got the technology to collect information, we've got the technology to store data, to process it. We've got lots of excellent models which we can put together to help to understand what's going on, be that a physical system or an environmental system or a social system. But very often the data that's needed to create that model and make it effective is in the hands of one company or one organization or one person, and it's being collected for one purpose. So connecting those data sets together to give you that twin is a challenge. And many of the challenges we're facing are non-technical, they're legal, they're ethical, they're procedural, and they need to be stepped through very carefully. So those are some of the issues we're finding. And there are some subtleties in there. Some of it's around data formats, some of it's around the purpose for which data has been collected, and some of it's because once you look at the information, they're using different words to talk about the same things, and sometimes the same words talk about different things, and the information doesn't make any sense. So resolving all of that is one of the big challenges that we're all working together to solve at the moment. What we're working towards is a very open relationship with partners, very open relationship with customers, and a very open relationship with the people who are studying these things. We think talking about these things in the open is very important. And that also means that we're trying to pursue a set of shared rules and open standards for creating these things, whatever they may be. We think that increases confidence in the information that's in there, confidence in the way that they're used. It makes them mean they're more accessible for more people, and we think that's generally beneficial. And overall, I think that's the way to build trust in them, but also to constantly test what you're doing. So that's one of the major parts of it. And then I think also not working in the dark, making sure that this is open to people, that they can see that information is being collected, they can see how it's being used, and they can hold the people that are doing that to account by being part of the conversation. So openness, I think, here is our friend and lays the right foundation for being effective in the future. There are examples that we've worked on where we've started to look at how emergency response planning can work, particularly in relationship to certain climatic events and weather crises. Can you see how people are going to behave? Can you see how you can manage the flow of people through an environment, so by changing traffic lights or by closing off roads, and if you can do the right things to make people move in the safe direction as quickly as possible. So we've done work in that sort of area. And we've worked in modelling factories to make sure that workflow through them can go most effectively. So we're seeing it happening there, particularly where there's more of a physical element to the situation. There's a lot more experience in those. But we're beginning to see examples in the social space coming out as well. There's kind of an inevitability to the fact that people will join these things together, and we will see more happening, which is why I think doing it positively and doing it consciously is the right way to get ahead of some of these problems and make sure they're solved in a positive way, rather than us possibly suffering some of the negative consequences if they're not done well.